After last week's announcement of the new Volta GV100 GPU, I decided that it would be fun that would predict, or vaticinate rather, the power of the consumer lineup of Volta cards and their potential. That is, of course, if Volta as an architecture is used fully within the consumer market. So let's get started on a couple of basic concepts that you'll need to grasp in order to understand what I'm saying later on. So essentially, GPU chips from NVIDIA are broken down into what NVIDIA calls graphics processing clusters, or GPCs. Within a GPC, there is a certain amount of SMM/SMXs, which contain CUDA cores. Now, when NVIDIA made Maxwell, the 900 series, SMMs replaced the former SMXs in Kepler, as SMMs were found by NVIDIA to be far more power efficient and energy efficient. As such, for Pascal and Volta, there is a total of 6 GPCs overall, and in Volta, it contains 14 SMMs each in a GPC with a total of 64 CUDA cores per SMM. So on to Volta. With Volta, there are 84 total SMMs. So 84 SMMs times 64 CUDA cores gives Volta a full potential of 5,376 CUDA cores, as those 6 GPCs contain 14 SMMs each, with 896 CUDA cores per GPC, as each SMM contains 64 CUDA cores. It's a bit complex, but all you really need to know from this diagram is that the biggest Volta chip can at maximum contain 5,376 CUDA cores unless they added extra GPCs, but I doubt that considering that the block diagram usually shows the full potential. So let's get started with what NVIDIA should announce coming Q1 2018, which is the GTX 2080 or 1180, which will succeed the Pascal lineup. What you need to know is that in the past, NVIDIA has always made their XX80 chips have 2/3 of the total GPCs, or in other words, 2/3 of the total maximum core count of the current architecture. For example, let's go into NVIDIA's past architectures. Having a look at the GTX 980, it has a total CUDA core count of 2,048 CUDA cores, whereas the biggest Maxwell chip, which was the Titan X Maxwell, had 3,072 CUDA cores. So let's do some simple math and find that as a simplified fraction. So 2048 over 3072, and we get 2/3. This was also true of Pascal, where the Titan XP has 3,840 CUDA cores, and the GTX 1080 has 2,560 CUDA cores. Again, when simplified, 2560 over 3840 equals 2/3. So if we expand this trend to Volta, the GPU that will probably become GV104 will have 2/3 of 5,376 CUDA cores, which in the end is 3,584 CUDA cores, which gives us 56 SMMs, which is 4 out of the total 6 GPCs, which sounds exactly right. Now, this is something I'm very confident on, as this is a clear trend in NVIDIA's setup for consumer graphics cards, at least in the last 2 architectures. Now from here on, things can change based on a number of reasons. For instance, clock speed changes from architecture to architecture, so we may see a large increase or a small increase or no increase at all in clock speeds. In addition, NVIDIA will have made instruction per clock improvements for the Volta architecture from Pascal, so most of it will be fueled from the move from 16 nanometer to 12 nanometer, but it's hard to say what kind of IPC improvement we will actually see, but I'm going to be conservative and estimate around 15% improvement, maybe 10% at worst. Also remember that core performance between Kepler and Maxwell improved by 35%, and that was on the exact same node. So with Volta, we could see even higher than my estimation in terms of IPC improvement, but without any slides or any sort of presentation on this, it's merely an estimation on my part, especially for the consumer parts. In the end, what this means is that each Volta core is now more efficient than Pascal's CUDA cores, and that can push more performance at the same clock speed. In addition, I'm estimating that core clock speed should also modestly increase by around about 10 to 20%, depending on how good the yields are and the power efficiency. This is all because ever since Kepler, clock speeds have improved, and I don't think it'll basically stop now. So I won't be overzealous with my estimation, and if we apply a 13% clock speed improvement to Pascal, we get about 1815 megahertz, or 1815 megahertz, or somewhere around there, which should be the base clock of the GTX 2080. Now, with a boost clock, it's going to be around about 1958 megahertz. Now, keep in mind, clock speeds, like I said, can change from architecture to architecture, so it could even be lower than Pascal if core efficiency is greatly improved, or be much higher if 12 nanometer can actually do higher core clock speeds. Now, with all this in mind, this gives the GTX 2080 a total floating point 32 compute power of 14 teraflops, which is the equivalent of a GTX 1080 Ti at 2000 megahertz. Now, if we include a 10% IPC improvement on top of that, we reach around about 15.4 teraflops, and from there, GPU boost could push it even further beyond. All that you need to know is that based off the trends, the GTX 2080 will be faster than the Titan XP by around about 20%, maybe even 25%. Now we move on to the most interesting card here, which is the GTX 2070. Now historically, Nvidia have made their XX70 cards contain around 50 to 54% of the largest chips GPCs. So in Volta, there is 6 GPCs, and from that we should see 3 GPCs on the GTX 2070. Now let's go into the past architectures and explore to see if this trend is true. So let's take a look at the GTX 970, which is one of the hottest selling cards of its time. It contained 16 64 CUDA cores, which is 13 SMMs, which is around 54% of the total SMMs available for Maxwell. Now the GTX 1070, which is Pascal's bestseller, it has a total of 1,920 CUDA cores, or 30 SMMs, which is exactly 50% of the total 60 SMMs available to Pascal. Now, if this trend continues to Volta as well, I estimate that the GTX 2070 will have 2,688 CUDA cores, which is directly 42 SMMs, or 3 GPCs. If clocks also increase around the same amount as the GTX 2080, and a 1701 MHz base clock and a 1901 MHz boost clock, the GTX 2070 would have a FP32 compute power of 10 teraflops, and with a 10% core improvement, that'll be more like 11 teraflops. So it should match the GTX 1080 Ti or best it. Of course, this is without GPU boost pushing clocks any further and making the performance any better. Next up to the batting line is the GTX 2060, which should sport 1/3 of the total SMMs of Volta, or 2 GPCs. Now, like the last two cards, this trend was true of the GTX 1060 and also of the 960. So 1/3 of 5,376 CUDA cores equals 1,792 CUDA cores, or 28 SMMs, which is exactly 1/3 of the 84 SMMs available to Volta. Now this should give us an FP32 compute power of 6.9 teraflops with a boost clock of 1930 MHz, which is right in line with GTX 1070 or 980 Ti power. Now add on any core efficiency and GPU boost improvements and you're getting around GTX 1070 power or better in a mid-range card. Now for the GTX 2050, it's a little harder since once you come down here, almost anything can happen. But essentially in the past, you've been looking at 1 GPC. So you're looking at around about 14 SMMs, which is 896 CUDA cores. And if you put that at a boost clock of 1644 megahertz, you get a total of 2.9 teraflops of compute power. And with a 10% core performance improvement, that takes you to around about GTX 1060 3GB territory, which is a welcome improvement for the low-end market. Now, most of all, the trend of this card not requiring a power pin should continue, which means premium 1080p 60 FPS without a need of a power supply. For the GTX 2050 Ti, I probably should have put this before the GTX 2050 as I was going in descending order, but you gotta know that basically Nvidia gives 120% of a GPC to the XX50 Ti's over the XX50. At least this is what they did for Pascal. So if we take that and apply it to the 2050 Ti, we get an extra 2.8 SMMs, which is pretty much impossible. So either Nvidia gives us 3 extra SMMs or they give us 2. And it's really hard to tell, but I'm going to go with the extra 3 SMMs just for a round number. And I'm not very confident in this, so don't hold me to it in terms of this prediction, but I would give it 1088 CUDA cores, or around 3.4 teraflops at a boost clock of 1573 MHz, which is very close to the GTX 1060 6GB. Now again, the same old, this doesn't take into account GPU boost or core performance improvements, so even from there it could go a little bit further. This then brings us to the graphics card to beat all graphics cards, the penultimate performer, the Titan XV, which coincidentally would have been the 5th Titan had Nvidia not released the first Titan XP. The naming and marketing would have tied in so well since V is the 5th Roman numeral. Anyways, we should see a total of 5,376 CUDA cores since, like the latest Titan XP, it has a full potential cores from the architecture, and this has been the trend for the last Titan released in every architecture by Nvidia, and I don't think they will stop now. So this means 6 GPCs, 84 SMMs, and 21 teraflops of FP32 compute power. And it would be the best Titan that we've ever seen, absolutely blowing away the Titan XP. And I could say without question that 4K gaming has been dominated at that point, and 6K or 8K is where we'll be looking towards. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took a lot of work to make this, so leaving a like or becoming a patron on Patreon helps us make more content like this. After all, it's not just me who works on these videos, and all your support is extra welcome. Now, we want to start reviewing the latest and greatest hardware, and subscribing to the channel and becoming a patron allows us to do that. Without you, we'd be nothing. So help us out and help grow the community together. And hopefully I can put out some proper reviews that you guys will enjoy, because I know you guys at the AMD subreddit, you know, you're not getting reviews that are up to really standard in terms of methodology. And you guys on the Nvidia side are always getting, you know, basically fanboyed by AMD fans. I just want to put out true, very neutral reviews that show the facts. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Links will be down below in the description. Thanks for watching.